When someone says the word prison, they usually mean a place where a criminal gets locked away behind bars, right? However, in this video, I'll explain why not all prisons are physical or literal, and why not all criminals are human. Hello, fantastic people. Welcome to Mr. Radden. Mental wellness with a twist. So for this video, I'll be going over 3 examples of how OCD is a criminal and can make you feel like a prisoner in your own brain. Believe me, I know exactly what that feels like. And one of these examples is one of my own, so stay tuned for that right at the end. The first example is, and I won't be saying any names, I don't ever say any names when I'm giving examples of other people's OCD. So, complete, what's the word I'm looking for? Anonymity, oh. They will remain anonymous. Let's go with that. So for this example, it's about a woman who had a problem when it came to driving. Now, for this particular problem, her OCD would make her feel like she had hit someone with her car whenever she felt a bump as she was driving along. So what she would have to do was keep getting out of her car to check around it to make sure that there was no one there or any animals. And then she would get back on her car, back in her car, and continue driving. Now, the biggest problem with this OCD situation is that every single time she felt a bump under her car as she was driving, she would then have to stop the car again, get back out of the car, and check around the area to make sure she hadn't hit someone. Now, you imagine doing that sometimes maybe every 10 seconds. Every time you felt a bump in the road, your OCD would kick in and say, how do you know you haven't just killed someone? So you get back out of the car and you check again. There are 2 possible solutions for this that I can think of. Now, the first one, you could be thinking, then just stop driving altogether. And that's what she did. The problem with that solution is there are some places that you can't get to unless you do drive. I'm not counting the train here because usually that's a pretty smooth journey. I'm only counting taxis, for instance. Or maybe you're driving with a friend. But there are some places you can't get to unless you do drive to them, right? Or get a lift there. So even if you did get a lift in a taxi, or maybe even a bus, for instance, every time the taxi felt a bump, or let me rephrase it, every time you felt a bump whenever you were in the taxi, or you felt a bump when you were in the bus or in your friend's car, your OCD would take things a step further. It would tell you, well, what if your friend's hit someone, or what if the taxi driver has hit someone? What are you going to do then? Are you going to say, okay, I need to tell the taxi driver to stop, even if we're on the main road, get out myself and double check? Or am I going to tell the taxi driver or my friend to get out of the car to double check what's going on, to make sure that we haven't hit someone? And what about the bus? Buses are way bigger. Are you going to tell the driver, excuse me, but we need to stop because I have to make sure that we haven't hit someone or a cat or something? You see, your OCD will always take things a step further. So even if you're not the one driving the car, it doesn't mean your OCD isn't going to say, right, enough. You could have hit someone. Your OCD, unless you, and this is the second option by the way, unless you ignore that feeling in your brain that you have to check that you haven't killed someone or sent someone to the hospital, your best option is to not set foot in any vehicle ever again, period, to make sure that that feeling doesn't come up. Hence why your OCD will make you feel like a prisoner in your own brain in that regard. Because it's a lot more tricky when your OCD makes you feel that you've either killed someone or sent them to the hospital every time you're behind the wheel of a car or you're in someone else's car. Yeah. Okay, so the second example. Now this man, I think he may have lived in the city, and he had to clean his apartment from top to bottom, a really deep clean, as much as he could, every day before he could leave. Here's the problem with that. As soon as he finished cleaning, no matter how long it took him to finish cleaning, as soon as he stepped out of his apartment, his OCD would kick in and say, your apartment isn't clean enough. So his OCD would tell him or make him feel that his apartment still wasn't clean enough. Didn't matter how long he'd spent cleaning it already, that urge to go back into his apartment and give it another spanking clean from top to bottom, every inch, every corner, would be too strong for him to pull away, and he would go back in and redo the whole thing. And after he'd done that again, stepping back out of his apartment, didn't even matter if he'd locked the door behind him. His OCD would once again click in and tell him, still not clean enough, mate. You're gonna have to go back in there. Yeah, but I just spent over an hour. It doesn't matter. Get back in there. And that's exactly what he would do. Again, and again, and again. And ladies and gents, he could be spending the entire day cleaning his apartment from top to bottom, because it wouldn't feel clean enough. Was it clean? Probably. I mean, if you'd done a really good job, yeah, I'm sure it was completely clean. But his OCD made him feel that it just wasn't clean enough. So, say goodbye to a personal life or a social life. Your life with this particular form of OCD revolves around cleaning your apartment all day until you're beyond the point of exhaustion, mentally and physically, and maybe even emotionally. You step out of your apartment, still not clean enough, get back in there. And he would, until the end of the day. I think you can imagine how he'd feel after an entire day or two of doing that. But when you feel trapped in that vicious cycle, extremely difficult to break out of. Okay, example 3, and this one's mine. So again, brace yourself. So for this example, and this was near the start of lockdown actually, I was doing the dishes, right? And right after I'd finished, I checked the time, and the minutes hand was not quite at the next minute point. It wasn't quite 25 past whatever the time was yet. And even though that had never been a problem before, this sent a huge trigger through my brain. I have discussed triggers, OCD triggers, in another video, and I will put the link in the description for that one if you haven't yet seen it. But this was one of the first times I'd ever experienced something like this before. It was pretty heavy, and it sent a shock through my skull, basically. I didn't know what was happening, but what I did know was I got this urge to pull out the adjusting pin for the watch and force it onwards. However, I don't believe I got a chance to do that, which made it feel even worse. And I had to wait, I can't remember how long, for my brain chemistry to rebalance itself, my brain to heal and move on. Now, right after this, right, every time I saw the minute hand not quite at exactly on that point, the next minute point or past it, my ritual was to force it onwards. And if I didn't get a chance to do that, I would hate it. And for several months after that, I would feel like I was wearing a torture device on my wrist. Now, if you're wondering how I was able to sort that out, at least for the time being, I ended up giving into my OCD and getting a plain watch. You may not be able to see it too well on camera, but this watch has literally nothing on the face except for the two hands, the minute and the hour hands. Because I just wanted my OCD to shut up. So you can imagine how it would have been for me if during lockdown I randomly went into a watch shop and every single watch was at a time that made my OCD go ballistic. Yeah, it's it's not fun. Even though I'm laughing about it, it's still not fun. But that was one of the ways that I felt like a prisoner in my own brain. And the main reason I still have this watch actually is because it fits me so well and I'm used to wearing it. I would like to go back to a typical watch in the near future if possible. There is, however, a bit more to that situation, more than I'll divulge in this particular video, and I do have other examples to come, but that, ladies and gents, is just 3 examples of how OCD can make you feel like a prisoner in your own brain. And anyone else who's experienced anything OCD related like that, they will tell you what a nightmare it can be, even if in the future you can laugh it off, which for some of my experiences I now do. At the time, it's really one of my next videos will go into some ways that OCD holds you back. But that's all for me for now, folks. Hope you enjoyed the content. Feel free to like and subscribe and share around. And in the meantime, take care.